Okay, the call this meeting in the Infrastructure Committee to order. First order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Majestic, supported by Commissioner Romano. Any questions? If not, please vote. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Lucido, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. Any questions on the minutes? Concerns? If not, please vote. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public participation. Is there anybody, member of the public, wishing to participate? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, we'll close public participation. The next item on the agenda is department recommendations. First item is bypassed item, budget amendment capital plan, jail tower housing unit masonry remediation. Lynn Arnett Bricks. Lynn, if you'd like to come up.
On June 18th, our office received a notification by the jail staff of an incident that occurred in D block. This is in the tower, and it's floors 2, 3. And what had actually occurred is pieces of the structural glaze facing tile had actually popped off and fell to the ground. Fortunately, no one was injured. Upon receipt of that information, we contacted the architect, Ron Syme, in addition to the structural engineer, Kevin Zoll from AEW. When they observed the location, they requested additional facing tile be removed in that area in order to get a better look at what was behind that facing tile. And essentially what they discovered was the absence or lack of horizontal joint reinforcement and also a lack of mortar on the back face of that tile. Ron Syme is here, the report is attached, and he can go into a little more detail. And what we wanted them to do was ascertain or attempt to ascertain the cause and also a potential solution to mitigate this occurring.
Hello, everyone. When we were called that day, we went out, visually observed what had happened. And as Lynn indicated, what we saw when we removed some additional block is we had mortar only on the front face of the prisoner side of the masonry unit that failed. And after we looked at it and kind of did some analysis, we thought that building creep doesn't mean the building's creepy or weird or anything, but building creep, because it's a concrete structure, tends to shrink over time and the columns shorten. And we kind of attributed to that. As the concrete was compressing itself down, the masonry below tends to grow a little bit and went into a condition where, because we only had mortar on the front face, it went into kind of a point low condition and caused that to blow out. And where it blew out was right next to a column where we would experience the most amount of shrinkage. It was a very hot, humid day that day. It was very humid. We kind of thought that, you know, that kind of maybe was the tipping point, that some humid air got reintroduced, and there's a shaft behind that, and that caused the masonry to expand a little bit. We took our conclusion, or took our analysis and reviewed it with Dan Zeichmeister of the Masonry Institute of Michigan, and he agreed with us that it was most likely due to building creep or shortening of the structure. And he also agreed when we indicated that the intent was to horizontally cut out the joint below the structure, put an isolation joint in it to relieve that stress. Other locations where we saw some vertical cracking up near the concrete structure, we kind of attributed that to it's possible that there was a full mortar joint there. If there was a full mortar joint at the top, we thought that would be more of a uniform load on the structure and would cause a vertical crack. However, we can't ascertain where that is without removing a gross amount of units. We feel this is the best solution to correct that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While this happened, was there a possibility that somebody could get hurt by this stuff falling off the wall?
Absolutely. It fell from about 18 feet, I believe. It was in the day room, which is about 18 feet to the bottom of the structure.
And this is the only spot that it's
We only
loose, or,
We only saw it occur in the one location. We did see some vertical cracking on some of the other locations, because we looked at multiple floors, but nothing that would lead us to believe there was an imminent failure.
okay. But this is going to need to get fixed very, very soon.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
it's in the process of, it's about to start next week. They're ordering material right now.
How are you able to evaluate whether you see a crack, whether it's gonna give way or not? Do you really know? How can you really know?
It's hard to determine that. We did some soundness testing on some of the units. The area that failed was cracked horizontally as far as we could see down that wall. There was a shaft wall. And on the other wall, which is not a shaft wall, we did see some vertical cracking. But there is no great way of knowing. I mean, that unit could have been damaged when it went in, and it was just, a series of events. It was windy that day. There could have been a little building movement because of the wind. Could have been a little humidity introduced into the shaft. That just was the tipping point. We're not 100% sure why it happened at that particular time.
All right, thank you. Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I want two things. I want to talk just to let the rest of the board know that 2 weeks ago, Lynn, you did put in a request for the emergency bypass to handle this. Commissioner Brown and I think Commissioner Kleinfeld looked at it, and we were willing to do that. There was some paperwork missing, but then upon discussion with you and Deputy Executive Delden, decided that it could wait until this meeting. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we have been dealing with this and that this is the result of it, although it would have been taken care of sooner if we needed it. Second of all, Steve, when we have something like this that's kind of mid-budget, but it's almost $500,000, what does it do to next year's budget? Do we do any kind of, like, where does this money come? Because we have a budget next year planned and put in front of us, but it didn't take into account, $400,000 for this. How does that work? I just don't understand.
This $400,000 will come out of the 2018 year, so it'll come out of fund balance this year. So
Right,
there's nothing in for 19 because it'll be addressed this year.
Right, but the fund balance still is carried forward. Does that then, obviously lowers that amount of fund balance
does.
that's carrying forward?
It does.
Then do you give us something new on that, on these big expenditures before the end of this? So we'll see that things are a little dimmer on the fund balance, obviously, based on the $400,000 for 19, because we had to take $400,000 unexpected out of this year's.
Yeah,
So-
one thing we'll do is before we publish the final budget, then we will have an amended budget for 18. So the amended column will then reflect another $400,000 transfer to the capital improvement fund, which then flows forward onto your fund balance. I can update the 10-year. I don't do it every week, but
Right.
We can certainly update the 10-year and provide it to the board.
Okay.
I do that
But-
internally.
It's just something that, I just want to point out to the commissioners. We look at, the projected budgets down the line, but in those projected budgets are for capital projects, mostly, they're foreseen items. And we
Correct.
have these type of items come up on a regular basis, to the tune of, almost $500,000. Obviously $100,000 less. So it's just something that we need to look at when we're looking at how tight our budget is, because we're not really putting in, a cushion for unexpected capital projects.
Correct.
It seems like, right?
We have a contingency
Okay.
of about $200,000 or $300,000, but this obviously
Right.
exceeds that. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Chairman Leonetti, or Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. How long is this project going to take? Any idea?
I believe they had indicated approximately 30 weeks.
30 weeks? Okay.
And that's all provided they have to be able to get into the areas.
So
Okay.
There's some logistics that, they have to work around, that the sheriff's department's willing to work with.
Okay. And this, just so I understand, I'm looking at the pictures again. This is going to go through all the floors of the tower? Is that every
All the
single?
housing units,
Yep.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, the disparity between the two bidders.
Frankly, it's the methodology of how they're going to do the project. Ram Construction, which is the low bidder, strongly feels that they can cut that mortar joint out. The other contractor.
Other contractor did not think that was feasible with the way they were approaching it and wanted to remove the top unit completely and then reset it, which is very, very labor intensive.
Okay, thank you for that, because there was a big difference. Second question I have for you. It's a dummy wall, correct?
It's a, well,
It's aesthetic.
we're addressing the walls between the cells, all the walls in the day rooms.
Well,
So
there's
the-
a cement poured wall behind it, correct?
Yeah, the stairwell's behind it.
I'm just asking, why not just tear it all up, throw it away, and paint the cement?
Because it's a shaft that goes all the way down. So when you're up there, you can feel air blowing. It's part of the smoky back system, I believe.
Okay, I just,
So there's a gap there between floors.
okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Toko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, you might know the answer to this. This seems like a JPS issue. Why did this not go through JPS?
Well, deals,
We were here yesterday. We had a meeting.
it's 2 weeks ago. Bricks and mortar, just kind of thought was, you know, facilities operations. And
Well, it seems like more and more is coming off of that committee. I mean, I don't know why we're having multiple committee meetings if, I'll address that later. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? There's no other speakers. I need a motion to approve. Motion by Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Romano. Please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 6B, that item passed 12-0. Item 6B,
Need a motion to forward to finance?
yes, please. Any discussion on that item? Please vote. Item 6C, that item passed 12-0. Item 6C, a cost share agreement with Bruce Township. Santo? Yes. Yes. It's information. Go ahead, Brian.
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
Commissioners. Seeking approval on a cost share agreement for Stretch in Harrison Township, Pontchartrain Street. It is-
Excuse me, that's, this is Bruce Township.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not that there's anything wrong with that community either.
Oh, I have a different agenda.
We're always used to being last.
Yeah, Bruce Township, Christopher Court, Eldred to end. It's a cost share agreement with Bruce Township. Let me see here. That would be a 100% participation by the township. So we're requesting cost share agreement approval.
Need a motion on that, please? Commissioner Saugers, supported by Commissioner Romano. Please vote. You probably have a different agenda, Brian, than us. The next one on our agenda is the cost share agreement with Clinton Township for concrete removal and replacement.
Yep. Yes, that would be a cost share agreement with Clinton Township. It's actually in the Winshaw subdivision. This request through the township, it would be a 50-50 split on that repair. So this is a cost share agreement with them representing that, seeking approval for that.
Need a motion on that, Commissioner Carabelli? Support by Commissioner Smith. Any questions? Please vote. Item E, a cost share agreement with Harrison Township.
Yes, seeking, again, cost share agreement approval for resurfacing of Pontchartrain Street and Jefferson Avenue to Lake St. Clair. This is a 100% participation through Harrison Township, so seeking approval for this cost share agreement with them.
Need a motion? Motion by Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was that a special assessment by the citizens of Pontchartrain?
Yes, it is,
Yeah,
correct.
gotcha.
SAD project, yes.
Yep, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we go through any more of these, a couple more, were these that are in front of us today, were these all budgeted in your budget?
We have a program that we do with the townships as far as some of these we put on our pavement preservation program.
Right.
So it is something that's extended to the townships.
Okay, let me ask it a different way. I'm guessing that you have budgeted dollars for this type of program, but these specific items weren't budgeted. It was more of the overall, because.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank you. That's what I was trying to understand. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Commissioner Gillette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit following along those lines. When there's 100% participation, nobody has a question or concern. On the ones where there is 50% participation, are we able to say yes, essentially, to any local community who has 50% offer, or do we have to pick and choose?
No, it's with the 50/50s, there's still a pick and choose. We only have a finite amount of money. So it is, we do get requests in from our service centers as far as bad areas that we look at. So there is a priority list. So there's only so much money to cover. So we do listen to the townships, whatever they want to bring forward. They do their own SADs, like the 100% that we just saw. They bring forward those on their own. And then the other ones that they request, we have to look at our needs as far as our service centers and the townships and kind of group those together and see what we can come up with funding-wise.
You come up with a sort of an annual list then of prioritized needs? If there's 100 projects that are requested for 50%, do you sort them at some point?
Yes, we have our service center foreman turn in a priority list individually, and we go over that list as far as priorities.
And are all the items on today's agenda, are these essentially in order of priority, or do those things get moved around through the course of the year substantially?
They don't really get moved around. We do listen to the requests of the townships also as far as their priorities as well as ours. So, I mean, they're determined as far as the necessity when we determine our budget costs, and then we move forward with that. So, I mean, if one doesn't make it or just falls off, then we'll consider it for next year as far as that project moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. Think about this one before you answer, Brian. Is it always 50-50 share? What if a city said, we want to give you 70%? Would you consider that a lot more attractive to you to say, yes, we would accept that? Or, I mean, is there a threshold here that you would want a municipality to pay before you would be interested? And you know where I'm going with this, I hope.
It just depends on how much money we have available with our budget in our program for the year.
Could you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Could you, if a city said to you, we want to do a certain road, and by you figuring out what it's going to cost, could you go back to that city and say, listen, we don't have that total amount of money for 50-50 cost share agreement. However, if you're willing to come up with 80%, maybe we can work something out. I mean, has that ever been broached?
Sure.
Anything to stretch our dollars farther is welcomed. But it just depends, once again, on how much commitment we have of dollars for that budget year. So, I mean, sometimes we might not have money to, even if it was a 75-25, 75 them, 25 us. Depends on the size of the project that they bring forward. It all comes down to numbers and how much we budget for the year.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? We have a motion, right? Please vote. That passes. Next item is a G, Clinton Township Rehabilitate Greenfield Road.
Move G through J.
Is that Greenfield or Garfield?
Greenfield.
Yeah, I don't have us having a motion for after Commissioner Brown.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Any questions on that item? Yes.
Was this F through J?
No? Just F.
That was my motion.
No, but we missed
Well, yeah, but I did, so. Yeah. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I just don't want to miss an opportunity to say Hayes between 10 and Groesbeck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? I see none. Please vote. On F. Thank you. Commissioner Gillette?
G through J, move the entirety, please.
Any objections? Very good. Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith?
Thanks. Hey, hi, Brian. Rehabilitate Greenfield Road. Can you just explain what rehabilitate, is that like a cover, what does that mean?
It's a resurfacing for the most part.
So it's the
basically going from Canal
blacktop.
to Romeo Plank, yes.
But the blacktop cover like we did
Yes.
19-ish or something? Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We rehabilitate roads in the north, and we cut the trees down and fall into the holes, and we'll make a plank road out of it.
Up north we did that.
Yeah. Please vote. Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. All right. Good day. Have a good day, Commissioner.
Thank you,
Chairman?
Commissioners.
Take care, see you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner
Yeah,
Dujay?
just a quick comment. Brian, in the short time you've been here, you're really doing a nice job, and I'd like to commend you for it. Now, with winter coming up, are we all set for
But-
salt?
Yes, we are all set for salt as far as our stockpiles and future forecast of salt needs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Very good.
Take care.
All right, very good. Item 7 is resolution 7A. I need a motion on that. We have accepting a state competitive grant assistance program for the Public Works Office. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. Is anyone here from Public Works to speak on it? Want to make it worth your time?
He's got a lot of questions asked.
Don't forget to turn your mic on also, Brian, if you could, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a grant that Public Works applied for. We applied for $400,000 worth of funding from the state for a master plan for the southeast Macomb districts. There's 4 of those districts. The mid was already doing the master plan, so we thought it made sense for the 4 districts to also participate. So the state awarded us $150,000, and the 4 districts responded with the appropriate resolutions that we're asking this board to adopt today. The master plan will allow us in southeast Macomb to work on best ways to eliminate overflows, combined sewer overflows, and we're well on our way for that. Finally, $25,000 of the grant is to develop a service sharing agreement between the Mid and Chapelton employees and Southeast Macomb Sanitary District. What that will allow us to do, SCMSD is picking up some assets from Wayne County, including one of the retention basins, Milk River. So that is something they're now responsible for. We have a lot of expertise that we think we can help them with. They will certainly pay us for that. But the job, if we do a better job assisting them, that will actually help us reduce our overflows as well. So it's kind of a win-win. So again, this is no match to the county. The districts are paying for this. And these are one-time funds that the state has approved in order to promote cooperative arrangements between governments.
Very good. Thank you. Need a motion to approve this? Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Sauer, supported by Carabelli.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I don't have a question on this, but is there any way, we just saw in the paper today about the fat burgers. Can you give us a little information? Is that something you can give us information on?
Yes. Some have gotten early information on the Fatberg if they were on Monday's drain meeting. But so this is just upstream of the Clintondale pump station, and this is about 100 feet long. It's about 11 feet wide, about 6 feet thick, of various fatty, greasy material and coagulated ragging from wipes and all that. So that's something that we discovered. It was backing up our system. We hired Dosh to come in and actually suck it out, and it took them about a week to suck out. It is, if you've seen the picture, it is hideous. It is something that
I didn't look on purpose.
Didn't bring any pictures with me, but if you see it before dinner.
Where was this?
It's 94 and 15 Mile, right upstream of the Clinton River Pump Station. So it's something that has coagulated and built up through people, grease deposits of restaurants and all that. So we're using this as an educational opportunity for us to get out to the public, to tell them what to put in the drains, what not to. We've got pieces of it that one public institute is willing to put on display as an educational opportunity. So that will be announced tomorrow as well. So it's something that I think actually the AP picked up the story this morning.
Great.
We gave a little teaser of what the photo looked like, and it's this crusty looking mass that was in the sewer. It's now been removed, but it was this blob of material that. I won't tell you what we found when you start pulling it out, but.
So
very good.
I didn't look at the pictures on purpose because it's bad enough just to imagine it. But do you expect that this is happening in other areas of the sewer too, or is this a low area?
Well,
or what,
so
was there a
as
reason?
you know, with the sinkhole, we did a full inspection. So we discovered it during the inspection.
Okay.
So there are no other areas in our mid system that has this, so we can rest easy on that. But it's something where if people aren't cautious about dumping their fats and greases and wipes and all that, it can pool up and cost money to remove. So
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. I think I maybe just want to give out a shout out, and maybe Brian give me some rough numbers, but shout out to our Public Works Commissioner, Ms. Miller, that this grant for $150,000 is peanuts, because we just received one just very recently. Help me along here, Brian, $1 million something. What was can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, we got two grants, 1.25, this for Sterling Relief Drain, not for bike path, but for actually daylighting that drain and making it, the water quality, improving that. And it's daylighting the laterals so that the water can kind of soak in before it gets rushed down to the Red Run. And a bunch of trees and water, trees that will soak up a lot of excess water. So we got one grant for $1.25 million and another grant for about $600,000. No match, and that's something she'll be doing a presser on in a couple weeks. So we'll be going out there and opening the drains up and beautifying that wide open space that is about 5 miles long in Sterling Heights, between 15 and 16 miles.
So let me just add to that. So being on the Drain Commission with some of you commissioners, Public Works Commissioner Candace Miller, anywhere that she can sniff around to get grants, and I like grants, especially if they're not matching. I like grants. I mean, she's doing it. So, people say that she's doing a good job. I don't think so. I think she's doing a great job. And again, I'm going to blow some smoke up Brian here, but he helps her along here because he's the numbers man. So we appreciate it. And I really mean that. We appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, just to recap, you said earlier about which entity is going to be absorbing a pond or a detention pond, did you state earlier?
Oh, yes, SEMSD is going to take over, not ownership, but operation.
Give me the
SEMSD, Southeast Macomb Sanitary Disposal District.
Okay, and they're taking over.
It's the three mayors of Roseville, East Point, and St. Clair Shores. They serve on this board. They are going to be taking over some assets from Wayne County the Martyr and the Martyr Road Booster Station and Kirby Booster Station. So they'll be owning those assets from Wayne County. Wayne County wasn't doing a great job maintaining those, and that's
Okay.
those cities' flows. But they're going to be operating the Milk River retention basin.
Okay, and the reason why I asked this, 15 Mile became the same scenario we took over from the city of Detroit prior to the GWLA or whatever that's called. And we inherited the problem there because that was not ours. We took ownership and then it became our problem, or that district's problem. I guess what safeguards are put in place before ownership is taken for this particular district?
Well, I can't speak for them. They're taking over ownership of it.
I thought you said Wayne County, we're taking those.
Those SEMSD, which is not a county, it's a separate authority run by those three mayors. They're taking over.
So the county has
ownership.
no liability to that?
Correct.
Okay. Well, either way, I just think.
No, but I think
Well, we're off the agenda item, so,
Well, it was brought up, Mr. Chairman,
well,
that's why.
you brought it up.
Pardon?
Who brought it up?
The presenter.
Wow.
So I guess my
The
only
idea
question
is
I
for
caution.
local people to take ownership of someone.
And I
of
have no
something.
problem.
Yeah.
Again, I just extremely cautious because of the ownership we've taken on some other things. Didn't go so well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Leonetti.
You know, I'll save it for the next Chapter 20 Drain Board, so I'll withdraw. Thank you. Good to see you, Brian.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, need a motion. We have a motion. Please vote. Thank you very much. That item passes 13-0.
Brian, I just want to tell you that Centerline's mayor's on there too. Oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, item 8A, budget reviews versus facility and operations. Ladies off there.
Yep, good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to be with you again. The facilities budget is on page C35 of the budget document. I'm not sure where it might be on your agenda, but if you're there with me on that particular page. Facilities, not really asking for much here. Actually, we've trimmed the budget a little bit in the operating area. The budget's just shy of 17.5 million, 95 positions. Lynn has not asked for any positions in a number of years. In fact, she's down double digits from 10 years ago, I would say. The budget is increasing by about $1.8 million from year to year, but that's because of those capital items that we are rolling in for things like parking lot paving and roofing and hazardous material abatement, tuck pointing, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about that numerous times in the past few months. So the repair and maintenance line item is where that is being housed at this point. Without that addition, the budget's actually up 0.8%. So it's because we've trimmed some operating costs out of grounds care and janitorial supplies and a few other line items. Wages are increasing 1.4%, which is right in line with the 1% across the board increase, along with folks working their way through step grades. You know, you'll see a little bit of an increase as we've talked about, actually not dollar-wise, but percentage-wise in the workers' comp, unemployment, and other area because of the compensated absences charge. You'll also notice in the charges for services revenue line item, the very first line in the revenue area, you're gonna see a substantial decrease in 2020 and 21. And as we've spoken about earlier, the state has indicated they're gonna be moving out of the Verkulen building in the Majestic Center down in Warren. I think I covered that briefly in my budget overview a couple of weeks ago. At the end, their leases expire at the end of 2019. They're looking for additional space. We really can't provide the additional space. So all indications are we're gonna lose those folks as tenants. That's about $1.3 million in revenue. That has all been reflected in the forecast that I provided a couple of weeks ago, but that's what's going on with that reduction in revenue there, so. Kind of the end of my comments. Lynn is here if you have any more detailed questions about operational issues and so
Commissioner
on.
Romano had a question.
I got a question for you, if I may. When the state moves out of the buildings, are we looking now? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have my marker. There you go. Sorry. Mr. Schmigel, when the state moves out of these buildings, are we looking now aggressively to see if we can lease it, maybe buy out part of their lease, if we can get people in there sooner?
Well, one thing we're gonna do, and I think Lynn has mentioned this in the past, is the space at the Verkulen building. The health department's looking at moving from the building over in the central campus area, I'll call it the service center campus, moving out of that building and occupying the space that's currently occupied by the state at Verkulen. We talked about that briefly when the capital plan was presented, with the budget. As far as Majestic goes, I'll let Lynn address that if she knows.
Maybe if I could back up a little. The state of Michigan, they occupy about 34,000 square feet in the Verkulen building, which it's quite a substantial area. What they were actually looking for was approximately 62,000 square feet. So it's almost like I call it a super center. They have accepted a proposal, but their process of approval is quite lengthy. So I should know by probably next week if they have accepted a proposal, meaning they actually executed the document. Where they're talking about relocating is at Hall Road and Gratiot area. Now, in the prior capital plan, I had an item called Mount Clemens Health Center replacement of the HVAC system. And once you do that, you actually have to move the people out of the location, and it ends up being a full renovation. So you're taking that opportunity to paint the walls, to replace the carpet, those kind of items. So what we had thought, in the event that the state does vacate that 34,000 square feet, we had the health department take a look at that area. They seem to be very excited about it. It also keeps like the human services in one building so they can serve people and they're all at one location, whether it be veterans, mental health kind of services, and health department services. So they're excited about it. What we would have plans for the Mount Clemens Health Department is frankly demolition.
How much space are we talking about, may I ask?
There's approximately, at the health department, that one's about 32,000. So in the Verkulen move, they're acquiring a little more square footage. They have more parking there. They're quite excited about the idea.
So why would you demolish it?
Even
if you could lease it?
We'd have to put quite a bit of money. I think in the capital plan I had a little over $2 million. Even if you renovate that building, even the health department, we were going to renovate it for them. Just the way the building's designed, it's very choppy. So we don't see any future use for that building. Now, certainly that can change. That's always subject to change, but that's what the thinking is right now. As far as Majestic, they're in about 24,000 square feet. I have had one inquiry regarding space, but just sharing information. That facility, it's a very unique situation that we have. We have ownership of our portion of the strip mall, but it also carries a reversionary interest in the deed. So this building was going to revert at one time back to the city of Warren. But they sold their interest, so it would revert to a private landlord. So my thinking, if we cannot find another tenant, is to approach the person that owns the reversionary interest, and maybe we sever the ties right now if we don't have any intended use and can't get a paying tenant. So we're exploring these options.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does any of this affect the Thompson Center and the programs and so on, and the programs that are going on at the Thompson Center?
Not that I'm aware of.
So how many square feet at And Majestic, if they're moving out of 32,000, so it's the full 32,000 that can't be used going forward, or we're looking for somebody or something to put in there?
At Verkulen or Majestic?
Majestic.
Majestic's about 24,000 square feet. Now, the health department has a portion of that square footage. And then the state of Michigan also leased a portion of it. So if we cannot find another tenant, and it does have this reversionary interest that I believe kicks in, I want to say 2023. So I can't offer a long-term lease to anybody.
Will Majestic require help as far as the maintenance, as far as the structure, HVAC units, water, so on and so forth?
That's going to be a little complicated to untangle.
All right.
But we'll have to work through that.
All right, very good. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was going to go through my budget if you'd like. Obviously, facilities and operation is responsible for the operations and maintenance of county facilities and grounds. We're maintaining about 1.8 million square feet of buildings. We have skilled trades personnel on staff. We have boiler refrigeration people. We have security. We also have custodial staff, and we have a small administrative staff. It's the facilities budget that actually bears the cost of the utility bills, the garbage bills, building repair and maintenance, grounds care, equipment repair, anything that can happen in a building, we bear that expense. Even down to the telephone lines for the emergency system. So the telephone lines for the fire alarms, boiler alarms, sump pump alarms, and also the emergency phones within the elevators. We did not ask for any increase in personnel. So we have an overall increase from the 2018 to 2019 of $1,828,481. And that, approximately 1.7 of that is because of the capital plan items rolling into the operating budget. And the items that we talked about rolling into the operating budget is the carpet and floor covering replacement, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and underground utilities contingency, hazardous materials abatement, and also miscellaneous remodeling. In the personnel expenses, you see some increase, even though we didn't add personnel, of $91,204. We saw increases in wages. We saw some increases in health care. We saw a decrease in pension, retiree health care, and workers' compensation costs and unemployment compensation costs. So some of the expenses went up, some of them lowered, but it's an overall increase of $91,204. In the building operating expense, we have a line item called supplies and services. It's really that line item that carries the expense of janitorial supplies. We have elevator repair and maintenance going into that line item, grounds care maintenance, office supplies, garbage pickup, security services. And we actually are decreasing that line item to $107,000, or reducing it $107,625 from 2018 to 2019. The utilities budget, we are actually showing a slight decrease of $6,250. The 18 budget has been a little interesting in terms of natural gas. We had an extremely cold first part of the year, and the bills were showing that. We looked pretty good in electricity, but that was, and I hate to tell Steve, but we still think we're fine, but we submitted the budget prior to that long stretch of hot weather. So we're starting to get those bills in, but we think we're in good shape there. Also, we saw some slight increases in water and sewer bills. In the repairs and maintenance line item, and that is the line item that you see the largest increase. That is going to increase $1,739,200. And that's attributable to those capital plan items flowing into that particular line item, into the operating budget. And that would be those items that I had mentioned, the carpet and floor covering replacement, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and underground utilities contingency, hazardous materials, and miscellaneous remodeling. The vehicle maintenance, that bears the expense of repairs and maintenance to the vehicles and also the gasoline expenses. We kept that the same as in 2018. As far as contract services, items that flow through that particular line item are things like carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, window washing. We replace the mats, or we have them cleaned and then they're replaced or brought back. So we have a slight decrease of $14,500 from 2018 to 19. The internal services cost, what that means for facilities is what is flowing through that particular line item is liability insurance, property insurance, vehicle insurance, any equipment that we have, like the copy machine and the costs related to that, and also the telephone charges that I alluded to before. We have dual dialers on a lot of the emergency lines, and we bear the cost of that. So we have an increase of approximately $41,890 from 2018 to 2019. And also in the capital outlay, we use this budget to replace any equipment. This could be tractors, snow blowers, housekeeping carts, any tools that the trades may need. That one is used on an as-needed basis. So often you'll see, sometimes I spend that money and on other occasions I don't. So I don't know if there's any questions regarding the budget.
Ago, and sounds like we're seeing a little bit of, at least it's tapering off a little bit, it's taming down our expenses. Is that what you've been showing?
Yes, definitely for lighting, the kilowatts being used have lowered, but so much of it is weather impacted. Just like at your house, your bills will be higher if we go through a really cold stretch. But we're still pursuing.
But lighting's going to be the same.
Yeah, we're definitely using less kilowatts.
Do we know by percentage? Do we have enough data yet to know how much we're saving? We made a significant investment to put LED lights in.
We certainly can put that together.
I'd like to see that just to see where we're going.
Yes, and we do have an item, I believe, on Monday's meeting, which is a lighting intercom, and we can tell you the decrease in kilowatts and how that equates to dollars, because we don't buy electricity from Detroit Edison. We're electric choice customers. DTE is always going to be in the picture because they are responsible for distribution. So we do have a contract for not only electricity but natural gas.
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Couple of real quick questions. Commissioner Brown brought up about the energy savings, and we did receive that $1 million grant years ago, and I wanted it to be set up in a recyclable account for you so that as you made that savings, you can continue on through the county and replace it. But unfortunately, Steve never made that line item, so you can continue that year after year after year. So with that said, I ask you, you're aware that they're looking at the jail. You're aware that they
Yes.
put a study together. With that said, any of these major things that have to happen to the jail, or things that between needs and wants at the jail, because I look at things a little bit different. If I don't have to take it out of a general fund and it goes to a bond issue to the public or however it's done, it'd be nice to have that in that format rather than coming out of the general fund. Okay, so I just ask for you to take a real hard look at that when you're making those recommendations, if you could wait.
Yes, certainly what is complicating that bit is the intercom portion.
And that, I think it's $500,000.
I don't know the number.
It's hundreds of thousands, though.
But I'll have that at the Monday's meeting.
Okay, no problem. The next thing is that, how difficult would it be for you and Steve to take the JJC's utilities for a year and get that back to us, cost for everything, to go, so the electricity, the gas, the water, everything in that facility operational for 1 year?
At the JJC?
Yes.
The electricity is a little hard because we have one bill for all those buildings at the service center. So we can't isolate. We're a primary supply.
Well, you can probably make a pretty educated guess with the type
Yeah,
of equipment that you're running.
We can try and guess. Natural gas we can do, certainly water, sewer.
If you could provide that and get that back to Crystal, that'd be great. We'd like to see that.
Sure, we'll
please.
work with
Steve.
finance.
Yes. Then the next question is, I've asked this before, and I know it's probably not you. I don't know if it's Steve or who it is, but the county assets. I've asked for a list of the county assets and buildings and who's occupying them and vacant property. And I know there's a lot of it. And as we sit up here in different departments that you're not sitting in the room and they want to do a contract, again, I should do it over, I think it was Centerline Public Schools or Van Dyke, one of the health departments did a lease with them, and the lease was probably not the way we wanted it. But now I see that there's going to be available space that they could have probably used 2 miles down the street that we have. And I guess it'd be nice to see the list of what we have and who's in it, department-wise, meaning it's rented from the state or MSU or it's health department or, whatever it is. We have to have something like that, don't we?
I thought I had developed something like that in the past. It would need to be updated.
If it's, again, if we could get that information, it would be helpful for us as we hear different things that are going on and we're trying to make budgetary decisions on certain things. The last thing I have for you is just a food for thought to look into. A facility that had cement floors that I know intimately decided to take out the carpet, and they ended up grinding these cement floors and put down runners. And I'm going to tell you what, it's great. It looks good. There's no replacement of carpeting. I don't know how many cement floors we have throughout all of our buildings, but I would ask you to at least take a look at that, because that's a serious possibility of a big, huge savings for the county. So I just ask you to look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Lynn. I always appreciate how you explain everything that you come to us with. You have a great way of breaking it down. I'm looking at, generally what you said: carpeting, floor cover, hazardous material, contingency, and it looks to. I guess I'm curious as to how exactly 1.7 million was, what the number was that you came up with that, because, and maybe we're missing something, but it looks like it's been an averaging about 615 for the last years, and I don't know how it's broken down or if we're not seeing some of the other stuff that came out of capital, but just if you have it, or if maybe we could see at some point, like with all of those projects that you want moved into, and we've discussed this before about moving those capital projects specifically from your account into your budget. I'd like to see if, and maybe I'm missing something, that average over the last bunch of years, so that we know that 1.7 was, is the right number. So can you explain that, or?
We certainly can provide an average. In the example of hazardous materials, it's a pot of money. Not necessarily is it set up for a particular project. Now, certainly if you know you're having construction, you know you need to do an environmental survey, you know they're going to have to test the materials, and then you're going to have to develop a specification to abate and then also replace what you've abated. But we also have items come up throughout the year. Somebody notices, gee, it's something that looks like mold. We have it tested. If it is, it's removed properly. Also, we have items where a contractor's in the midst of a repair, or maybe it's our skilled trades, and they're questioning, gee, that pipe joint looks like asbestos. We will have it tested, and if it is, obviously it's properly removed and would be replaced. So we also are dealing with a lot of air quality issues lately. People have notes from doctors, respiratory issues. We will hit that budget in terms of, provided there's a doctor's note and the department head is requesting this, we'll do some air sampling.
So I understand, I think everybody does, that you don't exactly know what's coming up, because that would be great if we did, right? But through the years, though, I mean, just based on what we could figure out, it's been a lower number, and we've done a lot of construction, so we've had a lot of hazardous abatement, and we've had different things come up. But I noticed that over the next few years, at least, it's projected out to be 1.7 consistently over those years. And I just want to know, at the end of the day, if I'm missing something, and like I say, we probably could be missing some things, but the average has been 612,000 from at least what we could, come up with, right? So that being said, that's $1 million more we're asking for in capital projects, and I'm sure that there's an answer, but I don't see it, and I'm just like to, if you could provide it to us at some point.
Okay, we'll certainly attempt to put something together for you.
Right, and there's a whole, obviously, it's, where we were doing capital projects before and how we're trying to do it now is a whole different system and setup. So I don't, but that's a big jump, at least from what it looks like right now. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess two questions. One, Lynn, thanks for your presentation, by the way. In the contract services, does that cover contracting out, for example, the lawn service, the mowing of the lawn, maintaining the grounds?
Grounds care is actually flowing through services and supplies line item. Contracted services in our budget, what's flowing through that is carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, window washing, items like that.
Okay. It's interesting. I mean, why would cleaning the carpet be contract service and mowing the lawn be supplies?
Well, supplies and services.
Okay.
The carpet cleaning is done by an outside vendor. So is the grass cutting and snow removal. I don't know if we should maybe switch it around.
I don't know either. I mean, it's not
we could consider it. I mean, it's, we've been that way for a long time. I know it's not necessarily a good answer, but so we have specific contracts for the carpet cleaning, the window washing. I don't know if we have specific contracts for the lawn mowing, or we just have them come out and they invoice us, kind of a thing.
Well, we must know what they're going to invoice us through a contract, I assume.
Yeah. Well, it's either that or they're invoicing us. I mean, we can consider it. I don't kind of.
Okay, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it's just odd that one comes out of supplies, the other comes out of contracts, and they're similar issues. Just to follow up also, while you're up, Steve, on the chairman's question, if we've been averaging $600,000 a year over the last several years on the the budget item of repairs and maintenance, why would we ask for 3 times that amount in this particular budget?
No, I'll work with Lynn and get that. There's about 6 or 7 line items in there.
What does that mean?
Well, there's items that have been in the capital plan under the ongoing maintenance area for a number of years that are now being budgeted in 19 in the general fund.
Okay, so it's just an issue of there's money that's being moved from a
Right.
different spot.
Right, I'm not sure how the $600,000, what it is, how it was developed.
So we
I'm
should
not
see
sure
us-
what line items, I think, maybe I need to work with.
Yeah, that
Jen
might be helpful to find
figure
that
out
out.
what that is, I'm sure it can
Because
be
we
right.
should see a corresponding
Yeah.
drop then of $1 million in other things that we're moving them from into this. So, you know, if we're
Yeah,
moving
you'll
them
see no
from.
contribution to the capital improvement plan from the general fund for those items.
So we should, I'm sorry, say that again, we should be a.
So previously, there's a number of items that were accounted for, charged against the capital projects fund.
Okay,
There was a corresponding transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund.
Right.
That amount has been reduced because
Gotcha, yeah.
those items are now charged directly into the general fund, or will be,
okay, okay,
so.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you'll
you.
remember, if you'll recall, back in May, or June maybe it was, we came to you for a budget amendment for about $1.3 million, $1,250,000. It was for this year, and then that was reduced to $600,000, so to, $1,250,000, there was a couple items that weren't on that list to get us to the $1.7 million.
Okay, okay, thank
But
you
again,
very
I'll have
much.
to work
Steve.
with Jen to see how the $600,000 was derived.
That'd
Yeah.
be great, thank you.
Or Crystal, one, or both.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
No, I'll withdraw again, I'm sorry.
Anything else, Lynn? He's not. Oh, there you are. A-N-D-R-E-Y, that's you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Len. A couple of questions. Do we have any solar panels here? Didn't we put some solar panels up a few years ago?
No.
I was under the impression that we had some someplace. Okay, I think what Commissioner Carabelli was referring was the Thompson Center. Are you counting the Thompson Center into your square footage
No,
total? No.
no.
But you're counting Majestic?
Yes.
Okay. Two other questions. Where do we still have boilers?
We have boilers in the county building.
In there?
Yes.
So we're gonna need boiler operators until
Well, they're actually.
that building
Well, they're
collapses.
heating and cooling
Okay,
service people,
all right.
is essentially.
And last but not least, do you know that we've got all kinds of snow blowers and plows and stuff in the garage area under this building?
Yes.
Are we expecting a crazy September or what?
No, we're gearing up for the cold weather.
Well,
So
as long
they'll
as
do-
somebody else knows about it, then
And-
I'm comfortable with
And
that.
they'll start getting them tuned up and make sure they're operating,
Okay.
hopefully.
right. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've got a question. I was late coming in the meeting today because I was trying to pull in the parking garage. And for some reason, the county's got the idea that we have to close the employee entrance at certain hours during the afternoon and only have one entrance coming in and out of the parking garage. That works pretty good most of the time. Unless, of course, you got somebody from the public that's not used to using the machine and get your card stuck in there, or for whatever reason, they can't figure it out, and it causes a backup into the street. My question to you is, what is the efficiency gained by closing the one exit or entrance into the building?
It was an attempt to address the peak hours. So when employees are arriving to work, we'll have more entrances. When it gets lunchtime, we'll have 2 entrances to exit. So we're trying to do that. And then also at the end of the workday, we're opening up, having 2 exits
Well, 3
on that
o'clock
Main
is-
Street side.
I don't know, I don't, 3 o'clock's not the end of the day. I don't know. I just think
I
you
will
gotta leave
check
it-
the
I mean,
time. I didn't think it was supposed to be that early.
Well, it is.
Okay.
You know, I don't know when it started, but it was when I got there. And unfortunately, the poor person was struggling with the thing and asked me for help, and said, I don't have a clue, you're on your own. And, but anyway, thank you. All right. It's not germane to the agenda, I'm sorry, Commissioners, I'm penalizing myself. Anyway, any other questions? We need a motion to send this to finance. Motion by Commissioner Douget, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. Please vote. Thank you. Good job as always, Lynn.
Thank you.
Lucky to have you. 12-0. Well, it was just me. They saw me coming. Shut the gates. All right, Jaco. He's going to be up next. But Steve, you can tee us off, please.
Yeah, IT budget on page C44. Almost $11 million, or $10.9 million. Quite a, substantial increase from last year. But again, much like Lynn's department, we rolled a number of items from the capital plan into next year's budget as well as this year's budget for things like computer replacements, printer replacements, web development, all those things we talked about a couple of months ago. We're now seeing a full year of that in the IT budget, and that's in the capital outlay item. You're going to see about it's going to show a $1.9 million line item there. And that's where those items are. There's also a substantial increase in repairs and maintenance due to maintenance agreements that are now necessary for items coming off of support, and Jaco can talk about that. Wages are increasing by about 3.4%. As you'll recall, the board was gracious to authorize funding for a new position in Jaco's office earlier this year as a database administrator. So the 18 budget has about a half a year's worth of salaries and benefits. The 19 budget has a full year. So that's affecting that particular line item, as well as pension and employee health care, workers' comp, and all those related benefit line items, as well as a 1% across the board increase. And again, as in most cases in all departments, you'll have some employees working their way through their step grades. So again, the capital outlay items and the repairs and maintenance line item are I think the items of focus on the IT budget from my perspective. Again, Jaco didn't ask for any more positions this year or for next year, but he did get a position earlier this year. So,
Jaco.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Steve stated earlier, the budget looks a little bit different this year because of the items that we are transferring from the capital funds to the general fund. Just want to state that, also something Steve addressed, we now have at IT 40 FTEs. I think not too long ago, about 5, maybe 6 years ago, we were down to 35 people, which made it very difficult on our department. And thanks to the Office of the County Executive as well as the County Board of Commissioners, we've been able to steadily increase our count to 40 FTEs, which is what was recommended in 2011 with the Plan Moran study that was done, recommended to the county at that point in time. So we're at least back to that level, which is very helpful, and thank you. I also just want to emphasize, since that time, information technology has changed quite a bit. There's a lot of pressure on information technology. If you hear about things like big data, ESRI or GIS, these type of things, it's starting to use in government quite widely and in business in general. And all these things are putting upward pressure on us to be able to start looking at those different items. So we're not asking for any positions this year, and we're really thankful for where we are, but we will definitely be coming back in the future, to ask for more positions, especially in these new areas of business. We've requested an increase in the maintenance budget, mainly due to some items, and I can just call out a few of them. One is a software package that I brought to the board not too long ago. that's used at Public Works and will also be used at Department of Health. Increase in body cameras, Esri support, one of the companies, GIS, that I mentioned earlier, Drupal support, AI Smart Bench, and so forth. As we implement systems, add licensing, adding hardware to the environment, it always goes, in most 90% of the cases, it goes with support. With software, nowadays, the model is, obviously you buy software, but you have to keep it up to date because things change so quickly. So companies are constantly rewriting or updating their software, and you have to be able to keep up with that. So that's the one part of it. We also have a very slight increase, or asking for a slight increase in our training budget. It was $43,500 last year, and we're asking for $45,000. This area has been very valuable to our department in making sure that people keep their skill sets up to date. And then, to get to the capital outlay items, as you remember, in July, we came to you with some line items that we wanted to move from the capital plan, the more operational type of items, into the general fund. One of them, probably the most well-known one, is PC replacement. So that is one of the items. That's one of those line items. The other one is printers and scanners at $50,000, and that stays the same. We also have one for Cisco phones. The one for Cisco phones have been slightly reduced because we're in a pretty good position now as far as our phone updates are concerned. There's a miscellaneous hardware line item that was last year. The full request for this year, was around about $900,000, and it amounted to about the same this year. And in discussions with our finance department, we've decided to reduce that to around about $600,000, which is kind of the spending pattern from the past that we've had. We spend around about 66 to 70% of that budget every year. So we've reduced it to that amount. The other ones, like miscellaneous software, is $167,000. That is for software, new software, things like that. If you need Adobe Acrobat, if you need new licenses for some software and so forth that we put in different departments, it is to pay for those licenses. The second year of those software licenses go into maintenance. So after you pay the first year, from then on it becomes a maintenance item, and then from there on it is in the maintenance budget. Cisco hardware, around about $30,000, I think, and then fiber expansion. These are, the Cisco hardware is for line items where we need additional port density in buildings. In other words, we don't have ports anymore to plug devices in, or we need to do some re-engineering of a specific area because of segmentation or things like that. Fiber expansion, that's to keep our fiber network in the county up and running. We have a very extensive fiber network throughout the county. In some cases, very aged network, now probably almost 20 years old. So, we have some fiber cuts, just natural things that happen from time to time with construction all over the city, sinkholes, things like that. It affects our fiber. So every time that happens, you got to get vendors out so they can splice the fiber and make sure that these things are up and running. UPS replacements is at $30,000, and that's really mainly to keep our buildings all over the county, the smaller buildings that we have and off-site buildings, to keep them up and running where we have equipment in those buildings. And we have that in pretty much every building. Then there's one new line item that's been added to that, and it's video wall maintenance. And what that is, we actually do pay maintenance on our video wall at Comtech. The amount, I think last year, if I remember correctly, was around about $80,000 that we paid, and that is a maintenance fee plus a certification fee for the hardware that's in that building. We also now run into items that are not under maintenance anymore because they're too old, believe it or not. That system has been put in place 2013. The whole video wall is made up of 54 7-inch televisions. Those televisions are not under warranty anymore. So if anything goes bad on a television, we have to replace it with, you know, I just recently had to replace a power supply on one of those televisions, $5,000. So, you know, those are the type of things that I'm talking about that's not under warranty. Now, I can, you know, probably one of the most obvious questions is when does this make sense to, you know, maintenance gets so expensive to maintain this environment versus, you know, the cost of replacing that environment. We believe at this point in time we're not there yet. It's still, you know, much better for us to keep the environment in place as is and replace whatever we need to replace. But that's a question that's gonna come up in the future, and we will have to determine, you know, at what point in time does it make sense to start looking at that. But that's a new line item. It wasn't in the capital plan before, but it is one of those maintenance type line items that we have over the past, I would say 18 months, started spending money on, and we need to make sure that we're able to maintain that environment. And then the other one that's also a new line item, but this was in the capital plan before, and that is system upgrades and audits. So what I did with that is we had in one of our discussions, it was kind of referring to, I think, that line item at some point in time. It is one of those things, the bigger software environments that we have, and I'm talking about OnBase, which is our document management system, Court View, the court case management system, Visual HealthNet, the public health system, Meaningful Use, a system where we have $25,000 listed every year in the capital budget for Department of Health. It is something they do in the state of Michigan to stay up to standard with, and actually, I think Department of Health is one of the leading, you know, departments in that regard. Something that we do there. And then the other one is New World for law enforcement, the dispatch system, as well as Windows updates. So Windows updates in the past is something that was handled very differently by Microsoft. In the past, you could, you know, upgrade your systems and get to a specific level, and then you can wait 4 or 5 years, and then you know, go to the next level. In 2013-14, I think, we came to the board with a new form of licensing for Microsoft, and that is for Office and things like that. So we engaged in the new form of licensing, which works great for us, but they're also going the same way with operating system. In other words, the upgrade of your operating system on your PC. Where in the past we could do this every 4 or 5 years, this is now pretty much every 18 months we need to do this. Because your version, or the version that we're on, become obsolete after 18 months. So the upgrades are going to be much more frequent, pose a lot of challenges to us, because in the county we have about 300 back-end applications, and those are typical client-server applications. And then you have thousands more desktop applications that just sit on your desktop. So every time we upgrade, we have to test those applications, make sure that they work. Because if I come in your office and suddenly upgrade everything and you come in here and nothing works, you know, that's not going to be good. So there's a process to the whole thing. We are currently going through one of those upgrades, the first one actually, on the new Windows 10 environment. And from then on, it's going to be every 18 months. We have to pretty much do this. So those are some of the challenges, but those are the things that's covered under that line item. Right now we are embarking on one for OnBase. over the next few months, and that's going to be taken care of. We have one every year for court view, sometimes more than one per year. So it all depends on the type of application, you know, when and how we do these updates. Our challenges, obviously, moving forward is, you know, training is very important part of how we do business and how we maintain good skills and quality skills in the county. But the way that we do business is changing, without a doubt. Computer technology is becoming more of a commodity to an extent, and it become more of a consumption-based model, more so than ever before. And what that means is our momentum is shifting from that to become more solution providers, because that's really what IT is all about today, providing business solutions to people. And, you know, so obviously this changed a lot in the way that we do business, the way that we do things. And, you know, so it's exciting times, but it's also a lot of changes for us as a department, so. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob, it's good to see you. I have one question for you, then two for you, Steve. You were just talking about the Microsoft licensing that's coming up now every 18 months. Is that something like, and you compared it a little bit to like what we did in 2013 with Office, is that where we're going to pay like a monthly or annual fee now, like a licensing fee?
We've been, since 2013, we've been paying an annual fee. So it's a subscription model, pretty much. But the benefits of that, it include all the support and everything that you need. But the biggest benefit is when a new version of Microsoft comes out, you upgrade to the newest version. And, you know, we might say, well, in the past, we were able to wait 5 years before we have to do that. Every time those 5 years hit, it was at quite a cost, because you have to redo everything. But the better part from an IT perspective for us is the fact that you stay up to date. So any new applications that's being developed are developed at a certain level. If you fall behind, you cannot necessarily communicate with that. So it becomes a very difficult situation. Right. And especially with the 18-month upgrade process, right, it will pretty much become impossible for us to keep up if you don't, you know, handle that type of. And software companies are all doing this now. Yeah. They are moving towards a subscription-based model. Even for private users, you will see more and more of that.
Do we enter into a contract with Microsoft for that?
Yes.
When did we do that?
The original contract was done, I think it was 14, round about there, 2014.
Well, that was for
And I think the first one is for like 6 years or something like that, and then you have to enter into a new agreement or new contract with Microsoft.
Okay, so we should be seeing another contract sometime in 2020?
Yeah, we'll definitely see a new contract.
In the contract in 2014, I'm familiar with Office, so Office was, you know, you pay $100 a year, at least at my office, and you know, it upgrades all the time. But I still would have to upgrade Windows, but apparently the county had some contract that allows us to upgrade Windows operating systems from 14 to 20.
The contract is for Windows operating systems. It's like a core license that we buy, and it's for government. It's called G3, and it's specifically for government. So it's Microsoft. It's like a connection license.
Gotcha.
And then also the operating system license, as well as Office license. And there's obviously some other licenses, like our server licenses, SQL licenses, all those things are rolled into it.
Okay.
That's
so
correct.
we'll expect to see another one in 2020 then.
That's correct.
Okay. Steve, two questions for you related to the budget. Thanks, Jacob. One is indirect cost allocation. 2017, there isn't a number on there. Is there a reason for that?
That was an oversight in my office, charging that to the telecommunications fund. So what you'll see in 18, a year from now, is we're going to have 2 years of revenue in there. So that's a cross charge.
Okay. All right. So we'll see 75 is what you're saying, and we won't see anything in 17, the 75?
Well, you didn't see anything in 17 because
Gotcha.
the cross charge by journal entry didn't happen.
Okay.
So in 18, you'll see double that, basically.
Okay. The other question I have, I guess, is, we're taking all the stuff that he's got to do, the printers, the computers, and we're taking it what was once the capital expenditures, and we're putting it into his general fund now. It's a general fund expense, in a sense. And as I project it, I mean, the number's still up there. It's 1.8 million now. Next year it's 1.7. It's almost 1.7 in 2021. I guess the question I have is, why did we decide to take it out of? I'm glad we're doing it this way. I'm glad we're actually taking it out of the capital outlay account and putting it here into his general fund budget. But why did we decide to do that? Why did we take it out of the?
Because they're an ongoing every year type of activity.
Okay.
So we do this every year. The same, all those categories, we do that every year. So what we're trying to leave in the capital plan are renovation, construction projects, things that happen one time over 10 or 15 years.
Right, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I have, and you may not have the answer to this, is, and I know revenues are up, but there was this talk about a $20 million bond. I don't want to go backwards, but I'm just concerned that, okay, we don't have to do the $20 million bond. That's great, but do we put the money into these things like this, where we're saying, okay, for the next at least conceivably 4 years, we're going to see $2 million in IT, $1 million in F&O. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't shift money around that we were thinking about when we were thinking about that $20 million back then. Okay,
No.
that's all I wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Jaco, you have an interesting budget to come to us with, because, although you're not adding positions, it seems like we're constantly, and not like we're adding them on purpose, but we have maintenance agreements that always pop up after a while, and new support, contracts that we have to do. Do we lose as many old contracts as we gain new ones? So when we're paying for maintenance for this system, do we ever see a drop off of maintenance for the older systems? I mean, or does it kind of keep building? I'm just trying to get an idea of because this could be, it seems like it might be a never-ending cycle of increasing maintenance and support fees. But is there a corresponding decrease in the older systems that we lose?
If the older system is being replaced with a new system, absolutely. If it's two different systems that provide two different functions or functionality, there's no decrease. I mean, if you have to keep the old system up and running, that would just continue. So it's not a.
So generally, we're adding more than we're losing, right? So it's a constant.
In general, we're adding more than we're losing, and I can tell you also, Commissioner, that because the models are changing, the way that people do things, a lot of, especially on the software side of business, support, the cost after you purchase a system is getting higher and higher.
That's where they make a lot of their money.
It's where they make a lot of their money. The upfront cost nowadays is very negotiable,
right, and
we can really work with people to try and get that down. But what you have to look for is the cost, moving forward.
Right.
It used to be round about, if you talk about 20% of the purchase cost, would be a good method for us to say that's about the maintenance costs, after the fact. But nowadays, it all depends on what you're purchasing. When you purchase these software assurance type agreements, which means you can update it any time, you can do that. That's almost like a fixed annual cost that you pay every year.
Right.
So you don't really buy upfront the licenses. You just pay a usage cost, annually, which covers support as well as usage and all that.
What I want to point out, though, is, to the commissioners, although your employees are kind of staying static, these are technically like employees, because you need these contracts and these people, because they are, at the end of the day, support people to constantly maintain. So even though your staff is staying status quo, you have contractors that work for you also, and I mean, not we know about those, but that constantly every year we're kind of upping our general you might as well call them wages, I mean, because we have to pay them every year. So, I don't know what the, I don't know what the answer to that is, because it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight to that.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but but that increase is partially because there's support to it, but the biggest cost is more so the usage of these. So when there's different ways that you purchase. Some of them you purchase outright and it belongs to you. So like hardware today, still, if we purchase hardware, it usually is our hardware we purchase, and we can depreciate it, so forth. But sometimes with software cost, it is just a usage cost that you pay every year to that organization.
I'm talking
And,
more about
part
the
of-
support in the maintenance and support
Yeah.
contracts.
And,
those
and
are-
I understand that, but they are really intermingled today because a lot of that is,
Okay.
it's kind of one thing. And we call it support or maintenance, but that's how it works nowadays.
And one more thing you touched on earlier was that every 18 months, as Commissioner Leonetti brought up, they change operating systems, and you then have to go through all of the computers with all of the different applications that they have on there and make sure that they all work with the new operating system. That sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, I can assure you that. We're going through one of them now at this point in time. It's a lot of challenges when you have all these applications out there. Right now, to implement Windows 10 on all the desktops, we've been doing it. Your department is one of the departments we're waiting on. And reason being, there's applications that you use that's not compatible yet. And we've just, for instance, at the Sheriff's Department, their jail system was not compatible. They had to upgrade theirs first before we can roll out Windows 10.
Got it.
They just did that last Saturday. That pushed us like a month back for starting date with the sheriffs. On base, we have exactly the same thing. We have to update that before we can roll out Windows 10. So that's why keeping things at a higher level is better for us in the long run, because if you don't, it becomes even more complicated and you have more of those situations to be able to attain those service levels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of piggyback off of what Chair Smith is saying, so I hate to ask this question and go all office space on you, but what do you guys actually do? What does the IT department for the county cover, and what do the contractors cover? Because I'm looking at, web development, for example. If you're an IT employee, that's relatively basic. I mean, I'm not an IT employee by any stretch of the imagination, and I've made my own websites. So I'm curious as to what, are you guys like a help desk for if I forget my password or my computer shuts off, to like laying the fiber network? Like, what's the parameters of the IT department for the county?
So that's a very long conversation.
I thought.
But if I can just, on that specific item, if you ask about web, you've built websites yourself, I've built websites myself. I can tell you, I cannot build the county's websites. County's websites is built on a platform, an enterprise platform, which is a free platform called Drupal. But to be able to do that, although the platform is free, to be able to code that, you need special skills. We don't have those skills in the county. And when this was stood up probably 8, 9 years ago for the first time, at that point in time, we had a contractor that pretty much built out the new environment for us. So that's why that is a contractor and always has been. We actually now engaging one of another company that can act as a backup for us and help us out, in reducing the cost a little bit. And it's more so also accountability, with making sure that we always follow the right direction and doing the right thing. And then at the same time, we're building out skills of people in our department to be able to do at least some of the smaller tasks. So that's just an
right. There's a
explanation
million
of that system.
There's a million
if
examples.
If I go into the, for instance, our hardware environment, which cost us probably almost $2 million in 2013, that environment, at the beginning, very highly skilled skill set needs to get that done. We have 2 or 3 people now that knows that environment inside out. We hardly ever call the vendors anymore. But to support that environment, the hardware, just the hardware, means if something goes wrong with that hardware, today cost us $300,000 a year. And that is just if some piece of hardware goes bad. And we cannot be without that because, we have to have those kind of, so it all depends on the system.
So basically,
how we
the
support.
specialized services and, to get things up and running and things, that's more of contract, and you guys are more of the steady day-to-day maintenance.
The steady day-to-day
Okay.
maintenance, but also, also how we do things, like I said earlier, is changing. So we are focusing on how to train staff to be able to provide solutions and things like that. And we've done a lot of that, but it comes over time. It's not something that you do overnight.
Okay, thank you. I know some of the commissioners and I have had, numerous conversations about the ID department over the last month or so with a lot of these contracts coming forward. So I really just kind of wanted to hammer down to the basics as to what the county actually handles.
And I would like the opportunity at some point in time to come and talk to the board. We implemented in January this year, we implemented a strategic plan for IT. And we're very proud of what we did. And that's pretty much telling us where we're going with IT in Macomb County today.
We're gonna request that of the office, to have you come back and scrap this. We're very interested in that.
Yeah, and I would like to do that and present that, and so people can understand what our vision is with Macomb County IT. And maybe it'll provide some, instead of going technical, what's really our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? And why are we trying to accomplish those things?
Hopefully it won't be more comprehensive, more successful than the Lions, the long-term goals for their seasons. They keep changing from year to year and get very expensive.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't want to be compared with.
No, I hope not. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you, Chair. You indicated that you implemented a 4-day work week this summer. Do you plan for that to be only in the summer or year-round?
Yeah, we did that, just from right until the week after Labor Day, it ended.
So it's just a summer thing? That's
Just a summer
is
thing.
it summer or is it all year-round is my question.
Yeah,
So
it's just a summer thing, but we did it as a pilot in our department, to see if it benefits people in general. The short answer is yes, that's what we did. We are looking at, and we've talked to HR, they did at some point in time a 9-day, 1 day off, like 2 weeks, 1 day off work week. The difficulty is when summer is over, obviously people have children they need to take care of and so on. So coming at 7 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 6 o'clock at night is a difficult schedule. So we are looking at a form of that, but it's not something we're going to entertain right now.
okay, and I don't need detailed answers right now. I mean, we can have a further discussion later on. Having the employees at home when you're a sustainer, as you say, and the county employees are at work, do you see a problem or an issue there?
Are you talking about managers
You've implemented with your employees a 4-day work week, but the county's on a 5-day work week.
Yeah.
And I envision you're here, you're the troubleshooter, you guys need to kind of be around here.
So when we did that, we had a discussion with our union. We are in a fortunate situation that Unit 49 is just in IT, and obviously their chair. So we sat down with union management and explained to them what we want to do and how we want to do it. And one of the requirements from our standpoint was, and we actually had people sign a document if they wanted to engage in the 4-day work week, is that it is important that your job comes first. So if we require you not to take the day off that week that you in, we can ask you to take a later day because of coverage issues.
Okay.
So our
Well,
department.
and what, I don't need a long, really, I have a couple of questions, and I got in trouble at the last meeting because the answers were long. I really need the answers to be specific to the questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the second question related to that is one of your challenges is increasing mobility of workers requires a robust remote access environment. Are you referring to your workers or county workers?
Everybody.
Okay, do you have employees that are working in even with the 4-day work week or even not when you go past Labor Day? Do you have employees that are working from home as opposed to working at the county?
We sometimes call people in the middle of the night because the system is down, and they're in their union contract. We have the ability to
okay, but
let
in
them
their
work
regular
from home, or if it's a bigger problem, they have to come into the county.
okay, so at this point, and I'm not I don't necessarily know it's good or bad. Could be a good thing, but at this point, your employees are physically coming into the building to work unless it's like an off-site sort of thing.
Yep, 95% of the time our employees will.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, I noticed that all of your training is conferences, and all of them are out of state except for one. And you've got several people attending. If it's training, with all the money we're spending, with all these companies that are so gracious to upgrade every 2 minutes so that we have to keep purchasing and purchasing and purchasing, shouldn't they come to us for training as opposed to traveling out of state? 5 of your 6 conferences are out of state, and that seems excessive to me.
It is unfortunately in our business, that's when you talk about Cisco on base, the big systems that we use today, it is wherever they have the conference. And so that, and then on the other side, we do have training in-house. I'm not in-house, but how can I put it? We have training, local training, where we send people either to Troy most of the time. There's a few local centers that they can go to. And some of it is online training where they physically sit in the office, close the door, and they have to do the training there.
Okay, I just get nervous because I know every time an administrator goes out of state for a conference, they come back with all these new ideas to purchase because I know who's at those conferences. So that's not a judgment on you, that's just a general statement. Thank you.
That's what happens, you teach people, you get ideas, they want to implement them. Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jaco, a couple of questions for you, and if you're not prepared to answer them, that's fine, you can get back to me on them. If Steve wants to hire a new person in his department and he requests a laptop, does he get to choose what type of laptop that he's requesting?
We only have specific models that we purchase. So if, there's a variety of models, and that goes from a desktop to a laptop, and there's what we call...
So they have a choice between what you have?
Yeah, there's about 3 different models, and then there's also workstation machines for people that use CAD and stuff like that.
Okay. So is there one type of laptop, or is there like 2 or 3?
It's one type of laptop. The majority of people use one type of laptop.
Okay. The next question is, if he asks you for specific licenses and he says, on this one I need to have the Adobe license so I can print Adobe, you'll get him that license, right?
I will give him the license. If he makes a business case for his office,
Okay, I guess that's where I'm leaning to. Who makes the final decision on who's requesting what, and if they're still using it and we're paying for licenses? I know nothing, and I tell you, it's your business. I just got a 20,000-foot view, and I look at replacing computers, and Commissioner Leonetti and Chair Smith, they ask some questions. How many years do we go through a laptop on a normal?
5 years.
5 years. Is there, and I know the heartache with implementing new Microsoft, been there, done that for a company, but is this something not to think about? We're getting a new laptop in 5 years. you get that new laptop, you put all the new updates and everything on it, and for 5 years, you're gonna keep using it, and you ain't gotta worry about having it updated, and it's still gonna work fine. Is that something you ever thought of, so we don't have to have the whole big process? Because if every 5 years we're replacing it, makes sense that before you hand out a new one, or reuse one, you know, from somebody else, you update that before you give that to them.
Yeah, so that's something that's done at that point in time. Obviously, the biggest concern today is cybersecurity. If I don't have access to a laptop to update that device,
I'm not saying
it's gonna
access,
be
I'm not
very,
saying
very
anything. I'm
difficult
just
for
saying,
us.
when you go to do your updating,
Mhm.
okay, because Microsoft does their updates, and our IT comes in at night, and they go through the whole system, and they update, and there's usually problems every morning when we come in. So we won't go there. My point is that every 5 years, instead of doing that updating every 18 months, or it used to be, you know, every 3, 4, or 5 years, is that something at least to look at? We won't be as, you know, high-tech of having the newest and the greatest right away, but it usually interfaces pretty well.
Mhm. It does up to a specific point, and the biggest concern is security, from my standpoint. And then the other concern is interoperability with software, with anything that you do. The updates come out with Microsoft. Their updates come out
Again, you don't
every
have to explain it
Tuesday.
now. I just think about if that's an option for us to save a
Yeah.
few dollars.
Exactly. A patch,
Okay.
we call it Patch Tuesday. So there's,
Okay.
every month there's updates.
And then the next question I have for you, I know it's every 5 years and it's kind of a standard, and it's been that way for a very long time. And I don't know if I should be embarrassed or what, but I have a Mac computer at home that's probably desktop, it's 16, 17 years old, and they send me an update, and it's like the brand new ones you buy in the store. I mean, literally, it's like a brand new computer, and it's that old.
How much does it weigh?
Pardon me?
How much does it weigh?
No, it's a desktop. It's a thin screen, sits on my desk. It's no, it's a huge screen. It's awesome, but there's no change really in the shapes of them, just the operating, and they send you an update, you download it, and away you go. It's old.
I completely understand that.
But it works
Commissioner.
fine. My next question is, I have a Surface Pro, I think they're called, whatever
Mhm.
they are. I've had it when they first came out, and that thing's gotta be, what, 7, 8 years old? And there's nothing wrong with it. So is it really a system, 5 years, we do this, or is this a recommendation where we really don't need to? We're updating all the software. Now, if you got speed issues, that's a card usually, or whatever you guys put inside to make them go fast. I mean, it's not my area. I would just ask you, as you leave here, just to
Absolutely,
think of the
Commissioner.
opportunities of how we
Absolutely.
can save some money.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jaco.
Commissioner.
With all these upgrades, with all this new equipment, what do we do with the old stuff?
You know, so when we buy computers, we buy them with 3-year warranty upfront. So for 3 years, if something goes bad, we send the device in and they will send us either a new one or fix it or whatever they do. To make the other 2 years up of, you know, what's left of that computer, where it doesn't have support, so if something breaks, eventually older, you know, computers break and so on, and there's nothing we can do with them anymore. We use those devices to fix once so that we can, that 2 years that we don't have support on them anymore, we can use parts from those devices and fix our computers. After the 5 years, the computers are pretty much done, and you know, we dispose of them. We have ways that we do that. One of them, the hard drive need to be destroyed, and we do that through a company called Iron Mountain.
So, getting back to Mr. Carabelli, Commissioner Carabelli, that he uses this for a certain period of time. Again, I'm asking again, I mean, he's using this thing for the last 7 years. Wouldn't it behoove us, I'm looking at some of the, I see your revenue, which is nothing, so wouldn't it behoove us just to, because we have the top of the line, I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there that don't need the top of the line, that could buy a lot of this equipment and be satisfied with middle of the line, that we could make some money on, instead of just cannibalizing the other computers. To, just a thought, I mean, I'm looking at some of these numbers, and maybe it's just me, but they look like big numbers we're giving out here at IT, and I'm just wondering, let's get some money in. I mean, I could see a lot of money there that we could make But I don't see anybody saying, hey, let's go out and try to sell these once we're utilized or have used them instead of cannibalizing them. Because they're useful yet, they still work, they're just not completely updated, am I correct?
They still work, but the challenge come, and that's something, you know, I can sit down with you for hours and show you what the challenges are. To update those computers, why this is when this is happening. So now you're asking me to go from a system where I can fix 2,500 computers when something goes bad at the same time. Now I gotta individually go and fix those computers. So number one, I don't have the staff to do that. We automate these things as much as possible today. One thing. The other thing is also, when you say that we're buying the best equipment that's out there, we don't buy the most expensive equipment that's out there. Our computers are not top of the line. And when I say that is, it's really medium. When it comes to processing speed, all those things, we always stay behind the curve. We don't buy the latest and the greatest technologies, because that will cost twice as much. So we really try to be as responsible as we can from that standpoint. But a few years ago, you know, probably, I say a few years, 6, 7 years ago, we were in that position where we had computers that were 10 years old. And it really burned us. IT could not keep up anymore with support. It was very, very difficult. So at that time, we made that decision to go to a 5-year replacement plan. You know, I do believe there's a lot of merit in that when you look at all the different areas of where you have ones. It's easy to say, I can take my computers and I can use it for 7 years. But what you're also asking me is I need to keep an image of that specific computer. If I only have 2 left in the county, I got to keep their drivers, all those things up to date at the same time. Nowadays, if I have 50 computers that's the same, I can push that out to those computers and they're up to date. In that scenario, I have to go back to the old model where I have to physically touch the computer, or I need to keep separate images, build them, and it takes quite a bit of time to build those images and then push out the images just for the 2 computers. So there's a lot of trade-offs, and I can most certainly understand your concern about that.
What's the average cost of the computer?
Our computers right now, we buy at $609.
$609. How many computers do you have?
We have probably about 2,500.
2,500 computers. Yep. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. Think you got you want to work in that department? You have a lot of good questions. Anybody else? I see no other speakers. Commissioner Leonetti?
So if assuming the costs are going to go up too, at $609 a computer and we have 2,500?
Yeah.
Right? I think my math is $1,522,500 that we can expect to pay every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are we going to do it where you want to, and it sounds to me like what you were saying when you were answering Commissioner Romano's questions, where you would like, and I get your position, you would like to have everything be uniform, have all those computers sort of be the same model so that you can, you know, remotely address any issues. So we can safely say, going forward, as a county, that every 5 years, we're going to have to spend at least $1.5 million to upgrade, not only upgrade, I'm talking about replace 2,500 computers. And the idea is that, I get it, there's a sort of balance. You're saying, if we do this, it's going to be easier on the cost for maintenance because things can be remote. In the sense, you might be able to not have as many employees because you can remotely deal with these issues. But it's a tough thing to see. I mean, I guess.
I completely understand that, Commissioner. And it's stuff that we deal with also on a daily basis.
Sure.
But
when are we buying these computers? I mean, when are we upgrading these new computers? I mean, when are we going to have these?
We upgrade. That's the PC replacement plan.
That's part of what we've got in this budget now.
That is what those are.
Okay.
So we have figures for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Of every computer that needs to be replaced and in what year and in which department.
Okay.
So we have all that information right now for the next 5 years, and we work off of that. Obviously, it changes over time, but.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Thanks. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Need a motion to send, oh, Commissioner Dujay.
Commissioner Leonetti got me thinking about it. If we're paying $609 in 5 years, I imagine we're going to be paying less because computers are actually becoming pretty much a commodity and the price is going in the toilet. And, well, if we're getting 2,500 computers for $1.5 million, I'm actually surprised. That's relatively cheap, if you will. For 2,500 of them, yeah. And going to what Commissioner Romano was saying about reselling them, if we have to destroy the hard drive, there's nothing left to sell, if you will, going forward. And realistically, who's going to buy even a 3-year-old computer, let alone a 5-year-old computer? Well, with no hard drive.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner
But
Gillette.
thank you.
Commissioner Gillette, do you have a question?
No, I was making the motion to receive and file.
Oh, very good. We need that motion, but supported by Jim Carabelli. Commissioner Carabelli. Please vote. We'll see you again, Jacob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Motion passes 12-0. We have correspondence of A through D in their entirety. Are there any questions on any of those? Need a support on that. Supported by Commissioner Toko. Please vote. Okay. All right. New business, any new business come before the committee?
Yep.
Chair Smith?
Thank you. Just some of you, we had a meeting today with a few of the commissioners with Jen. The rest of you have been invited to show up tomorrow early if you can, to come and sit down and talk with her about what's going on in the direction. There's just different things that we might want to look at for budgeting in the future. So if you can get here tomorrow early and you didn't make it today, please come in and sit down and talk with her.
Thank you.
That's it.
Chair Smith, when you say earlier, we're saying 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock, yes. Yeah, I think 2 o'clock lasted till 1 minute to 3 today. Yeah, 2 o'clock. Let's go with 2 o'clock. Thanks.
Any other new business?
They're getting ready over there.
Seeing none, we'll close new business. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public? Anyone from the public? Been motion by Gillette to adjourn, supported by Dujay. Please vote. Thank you, commissioners.